What's the best way to smoke rib tips? Should they be smoked unwrapped all the way for maximum bark, smoked and then wrapped until 205 degrees until they get super tender? Or is there an even better way to smoke them? We're gonna find out in this video, so let's get smoking. Welcome to the Smoke Lab. I'm Steve Gow, and on this show I do crazy barbecue experiments you would never do at home, so you can learn from my trial and error. Rib tips, what are they? They're small cartilage-filled chunks of meat that come from the lower portion of a rack of spare ribs. Basically, they're the part of the rib where the bone ends and it's all flexible cartilage. This cartilage and the meat attached to it are called the rib tips. Now, I always buy St. Louis style spare ribs from Costco, and they tend to have a lot of the rib tips still attached to them. I call this portion of the ribs the flap, which I usually just slice right off. I freeze them, and then I save them all up until I have enough of them to create a full meal. Now, you could just smoke the rib tips, chunk them up, and then nibble the meat around the cartilage. But if you cook them long enough, you can actually get the cartilage soft enough that you can actually eat it, which I really like. It's kind of like being able to eat the rib meat and then eat the actual bone itself, which sounds weird, but it's actually really good if the cartilage is soft enough to eat. But here is the trick. You want to get the cartilage soft enough so you can eat it without going too far into the extreme territory of overcooking the meat and making it pot roasty and mushy. So today I'm looking for the perfect Goldilocks zone where you have soft cartilage that you can bite through, but also perfectly tender meat that isn't over or undercooked. So I'm testing 4 different methods. First, fully unwrapped for maximum bark. Second, wrapped and taken to a high finishing temperature of 200 plus. Third, wrapped but with a low finishing temperature of 145 and held for 18 hours at 150. And fourth, wrapped and taken to a high finishing temp of 200 plus and also held at 150 for 18 hours. Now, I'm starting with 3 pans of rib tips, and I like to keep things minimal, just 1 or 2 layers of meat in each pan so everything gets a chance to develop some bark. Time to season these puppies with my Smoke Trails General Purpose Rub, followed by a layer of Oklahoma Joe's Carolina style mustard rub, because mustard and pork are best friends. All right, these look good. Let's let them sit out for 30 minutes while I go and light up the pit. I'm lighting up my Oklahoma Joe's Longhorn offset smoker with my Oklahoma Joe's charcoal starter. Can you tell I like Oklahoma Joe's products? I then let the fire burn down to coals, add some wood splits, and aim for a cozy 250 degrees. Next, I'm placing the rib tip pans in the cook chamber in a single file line. No, actually changed my mind. I'm doing it more like a triangle format, just to get them a little bit further away from the heat of the firebox. Anyway, now we're gonna close the lid and wait, cooking at 250 degrees here. 2 hours later, I'm checking on them and they're getting some nice color, so I'm flipping them over so I can get bark on the other side. And then I'm continuing to smoke them at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. An hour later, I'm adding the 4th pan of rib tips. These are the ones that are only going up to an internal temperature of 145 degrees, so I added them later on. Another hour later, the 2 trays of rib tips at the back are probing around 170, 175 degrees and have some nice bark on them, so I'm wrapping them up with some foil and I'm going to take them all the way up to around 203, 205 degrees. And another hour in, the front pan I added later is probing around 145 degrees Fahrenheit. It happens really quickly, so I'm going to wrap that and put it in my holding oven at 150 degrees for the next 18 hours. It's kind of like we're sous videing them here. We're pulling them at a lower temperature where the muscle fibers haven't had a chance to denature and lose a lot of moisture, and then we're kind of locking in that texture by cooking it for 18 hours at 150 degrees. So a really long period of time at a really low temperature is going to get them really tender instead of a short amount of time at a high temperature, which can get them really tender, but it can also denature the muscle fibers, dry them out, make them taste a little bit more pot roasty. And another hour or so later, the 2 wrapped pans are probing above 200, so I'm removing them. I actually put one back in because it wasn't quite 203 yet. And a little bit later, the foiled pan was finally around 203 to 205, so I removed it, and the unwrapped ribs were around 200 degrees Fahrenheit and looking pretty cooked. I didn't want to dry them out too much, so I removed them. Now, just so we don't lose track, I have 2 pans that were fully taken to tenderness and just rested 2 hours, and then I tasted them. I took a little bit of a nibble of them just to taste them while they were fresh, and then I put them in the fridge because I needed to taste them again side by side with the long hold pans. I also had 2 pans of rib tips in my holding oven, one which was removed at 203 degrees Fahrenheit, so high temperature, it got really tender, and now I'm holding it for a long period of time. And the other one, which I just took up to 145, so really low finishing temperature, and it's also in the holding oven, holding at 150 for 18 hours. All right, guys, it is the next day, and excuse my background, I'm just renovating my studio right now, so it's a work in progress. All right, looking at these rib tips, these are the rib tips that we took up to just 145 degrees, and then we held them at 150 degrees for 18 hours in my holding oven. If you wanted to make these at home, you could just use a sous vide machine or your oven. You don't need a holding oven. A sous vide machine will produce really similar results. So we've got those, and then right here we've got the ones we took up to 200 degrees, and then we held them for 18 hours at 150. We have the ones that we didn't hold at all. We just took them up to around 205 degrees, so really high temperature, really long time, but we didn't hold them at all. And then we have the ones that we took up to around 200 degrees. That's as high as I could get them. Totally uncovered in the smoker. We didn't wrap them, we didn't hold them at all. So let's start with the 145 degree rib tips and see what these taste like. Really good, ton of moisture, a lot of pork flavor. Biting into the actual collagen though, there's a bit of a bite to it, but you can eat it. So I'm pretty happy with those. Really juicy, not dry at all. So let's try the ones that we held for 18 hours after we took them up to around 200. A lot crunchier, a little bit more dry, a lot more bark formation, smoke flavor. It's got that bacony kind of shell on it. You crunch into it with your teeth and it's kind of bacony. Really good, but the bark is kind of beef jerky-ish on the very outside of it. So if you like that chewier exterior, then this is probably the way to go. But I'm kind of liking the 145 and hold ones so far because they're super juicy. Okay, let's try the 205 degrees no hold rib tips. I'll just take a really good juicy one here. Really good, a lot of collagen rendering. I kind of like the 145 and hold ones better. They're just juicier. These are pretty juicy, but the 145 and hold ones, they're the juiciest so far. I'm going to take another bite of this. Yeah, they're super juicy, and I can still bite through the rib tips. And with these, can I bite through the collagen? Yeah, I can, but I can bite through them just about as easily as these ones. I wouldn't say the collagen is any more tender than these ones, so 145 and hold seems to be the way to go so far, but let's try the ones that we didn't wrap at all, we didn't hold at all, and we took them all the way up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit uncovered in the smoker. And you can see that they have a really nice exterior. It's like they've been frying in their own fat. So I'm really excited about this one. Really good flavor. The bark is amazing. Smoke flavor, texture. It's like they've been frying in their own fat. Bacony, grilled meat flavor. This is really good. In terms of flavor, I'd say these have the most flavor. But they have dry edges. They're a little bit hard to swallow in some areas. Man, that flavor is amazing though. It's so amazing. It's like a really well-rendered brisket fat cap. It's a similar flavor to that. It's like really well-rendered fat that's rendered down. It's like yellowish, caramelly, sweet, and just ton of flavor. But having said that, a little bit dry in certain areas. I think the ones that most people would enjoy, I mean, I'm putting words in other people's mouths, but I think if I served these up, I would be pretty confident that people would rave about them because they're super juicy. And even though the collagen might not be as well rendered, the meat, the muscle fiber still has a lot of pork flavor, a lot of moisture, and they're just really delicious, really delicious. So out of this lineup, I think that the 145 and hold rib tips are the best. I think that most people would enjoy them the most because they're super juicy. They have a lot of pork flavor and there's no dry edges. There's no jerkying of the bark or anything like that. They're just soft and succulent all the way around, a lot of moisture. The runner-up, I'd say, is the ones that I took all the way up to 205 degrees Fahrenheit and then I didn't hold them at all. So a lot of time rendering, high temperature, but they did get kind of dried out. So I think in a pinch, do the traditional method, take them all the way up to, I don't know, 170 degrees Fahrenheit unwrapped, get some bark on them, wrap them, and then take them up to 205 degrees Fahrenheit until they're ultra tender. but they do get a little bit dry that way. If you have the time, I would definitely take them up to 145, 150, maybe pushing it at 160 just to get a little bit more bark, and then either sous vide them, so seal them in a sous vide bag and sous vide them overnight, or put them in a holding oven or a regular oven or something that can hold temperatures at around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Do that for 18 to 20 hours, and these come out absolutely, absolutely amazing. These are my favorite, hands down. I'll give you guys a look at this just to see how juicy it is. It just pulls apart like nothing. It's got a ton of juice in it. Loving it. And then the other ones, you know, a little bit drier. You can see that the bark is a little bit more jerky-ish, less moisture. These ones are really dry. The ones that we took all the way to 200 unwrapped. And then the traditional ones, they're juicy. They got some juice in them, but they just got some dry edges that you really have to chew on. So 145 and hold, guys, that's the way to go. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any ideas for future Smoke Lab videos, let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to the Oklahoma Joe's YouTube channel. And until next time, happy smoking.